Hi, Nisha. Welcome to 11 Questions.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Are you a tea person or a coffee person?
I'm both. I have tea in the evening and I have coffee in the morning.
What's something that brings you the most joy?
That's a good question. And I think it depends on my mood and the day. A lot of things bring me joy. So I'm incredibly privileged and blessed to be able to say that. My family, my pets definitely bring me joy. A really good book, definitely traveling when I can start traveling again. That always brings me joy.
Did you always want to be a writer?
I did. I think my journey started when I was a kid and my mom would take us to the local library and I would tell stories and, write it on construction paper and like put them together by like putting yarn in the 3-hole punch. And then I started reading Nancy Drew and Hardy Boy Mysteries. They had series with both of them together, like the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boy like crossover series. I love the idea of Nancy Drew and Frank Hardy like fighting crime and like solving all these mysteries together. And so I started writing like what I considered fan fiction at the time of stories with them. And after writing these continuations of these stories, I ended up starting to develop my own. And I've been writing love stories ever since.
If you couldn't be a writer, what else would you be doing, you think?
I think I would be using my degree. I'm a lawyer by trade, so I'd probably just be focusing on my career there. I still have my fingers and toes in a couple different consulting opportunities that I'm doing on the side, but that would probably take over my life if I wasn't writing.
When you write your books, do you follow a routine?
When I was working full time as a person utilizing my degree, I would basically squeeze in writing wherever I could. When I was commuting to the city, I would write in the morning and edit on the evening train back home. But now, because I only consult a couple days a week, I have a pretty set schedule of when I sit down on my computer to try to write. If writing doesn't happen in that time period, if I'm just not feeling productive, usually I'll pick it back up in the evening and try in the evening. Luckily, I have more control over my schedule now. So my routine is pretty much I have time blocks and I use those time blocks to basically guide a lot of my writing schedule. But for the most part, I have the flexibility of switching things around if I need to.
And is your workspace a messy space or an organized one?
No, it's very organized. I am insane about clean like workspace, work surface areas. I have like a laptop, a monitor, my headphones, a charger, and my keyboard and mouse on my desk, and that is it. Like there's nothing else. Periodically, like I'll have my iPad on a stand if I'm like doing writing sprints, and my iPad will be my timer, and that is literally it. It's very organized.
Is there something that you find really challenging about the whole writing process?
All of it. I think the easiest part about the writing process is the dreaming part, which is just the spark to developing the story. The brainstorming part for me is always the easy part, but the actual sitting down to write the story and then edit the story and then package and market the story, those are all of the most challenging aspects of the novel for me. Just telling the story itself is the stuff that I truly feel comes easily, which is a blessing. Just getting it on paper is always like where I start struggling. But I think that every writer struggles with a different part of the story and a different part of the process. I wouldn't trade my struggles for anyone else's just because I have a familiarity with it. And now I've developed different ways that I can kind of circumvent those difficult humps and actually get the project done.
Where do you usually find inspiration for the stories that you write?
It could be anything and anywhere. I often believe in asking the question, what if? That generally sparks the idea. So if I'm like out in public and I see something that's super fascinating, I'll often ask myself, like, what if this would happen? And that is often the start of a new story for me.
If you hit writer's block, how do you work around it?
Having deadlines definitely helps because you can't afford to have writer's block, but often I'll sit with friends and I'll talk to friends about what's bothering me with the story, and my friends are great, ask the right questions and explore other possibilities, which is the best way to get around writer's block for me.
If you were to be deserted on an island, which 3 books would you take with you?
Rock Hard by Nalini Singh, a book about how to get off a deserted island. and I would also take a survival guide. So those would be my 3 books.
If you were to pick one interesting life experience or story from your life to share with us, what would you tell us today?
I feel like my life isn't as interesting as so many other people's lives because I generally just like have spent so much of it like just working and going to school. Let's see. I guess the one interesting story is that there's only really been one other major like person who's a writer in my family history, in my family lineage. He's my great great grandfather. And about 100 plus years ago, he wrote a letter. I have a copy of it framed in my library, actually, where he talked about the family history and his love for poetry and his love for literature. My first hardcover, my first young adult novel, My So-Called Bollywood Life, was published on the 100th anniversary of his birthday.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so that's I think probably the coolest thing that I have about my life, that the one other person in our family history who loved literature as much as me, I got to celebrate the release of my book on his 100th birthday.